Here in my garage, I've been sued for a $100 million Ponzi scheme. Yeah, the Here in My Garage guy, Tai Lopez, who essentially is one of the OG financial gurus on YouTube, is now being sued for allegedly running a $100 million Ponzi scheme. That's right, everyone's favorite Corsa and Lamborghini owner has now been exposed for what most people already assumed, that he isn't that business savvy as he portrays himself as. Because on Monday of last week, the SEC accused Tai Lopez and his partner Mehr of defrauding investors out of approximately $112 million through their holding company called Rev.
No, use your brain. They don't teach us in school financial literacy.
Yeah, I never learned anything about running a Ponzi in school. I mean, if only he had some knowledge from his bookshelf to teach him that running a Ponzi was a terrible idea, allegedly.
Here in my garage, just bought this new Lamborghini here. It's fun to drive up here in the Hollywood Hills. But you know what I like a lot more than materialistic things? Knowledge.
I've always thought that video was funny, but it's kind of funnier now. Also, side note, I'm pretty sure this is one of the most profitable YouTube ads ever, but that might also just be a claim from him, so now I'm a little bit unsure. But clearly, this guy has been on the internet for a while, peddling his courses that range from things like helping you to get fit or build an AI business to starting an Amish homestead. I'm not joking. The guy who lives in a $100 million mansion with power is teaching people or selling courses on teaching people how to build an Amish homestead. Moving on, Tai markets himself as an e-commerce savant who can help you buy your own Lambo and plenty of bookshelves to store your knowledge. Build multiple income streams, and then you can just find the woman of your dreams, all because you bought one of Tai's many courses and gave him all your personal information and how much money you have in your bank account. I'm not joking. That's going to be a theme of this video. There's going to be a lot of things that I say that sound wild, but no, they just happened.
If you're an accredited investor with more than $1 million in investable liquid assets and you want to co-invest with Tai and me, click on the link below. We want to talk to you.
And while most people who crossed paths with Tai saw him for what he was, a meme, there was still tons of people ready to buy his courses online and help him maintain that image of growing success. Unfortunately for him though, everything came crashing down recently, like I mentioned earlier, because the SEC sued him for defrauding investors out of over $100 million. And the claims on this complaint are just crazy, even for someone who's known for being misleading, but at least he'll have some time to consume some more knowledge now. Maybe he'll learn to, allegedly, not run any more Ponzi schemes. But this story starts back nearly at the end of 2019, when Tai and his business partner Alex launched their holding company called Retail Ecommerce Ventures. The plan was to buy up distressed retail companies with brand name recognition and relaunch them as e-commerce platforms.
He is the co-founder of Retail Ecommerce Ventures, which has been buying distressed, well-known brick-and-mortar brands to turn them into hopefully successful e-retail businesses.
Some of these dying brands included companies like DressBomb, Pier, Steinmart, and RadioShack. I feel like RadioShack is the most prominent one out of all of those. And I mean, if you go to RadioShack today, it just looks like they're straight up just drop shipping a bunch of very cheap Chinese electronics. Yeah, dude, they got the knockoff LED AirPods here. Let's go. RadioShack, ladies and gentlemen. Tai Lopez. Knowledge. That's kind of depressing though, to raise a bunch of money to buy RadioShack.com so you can sell Temu AirPods. Come on. Now, I'm not 100% sure they came up with this idea in the wake of the dropshipping boom and were unaware of what the future held in the world, but the relevant period stated in the complaint from April 2020 to November of 2022. So basically during COVID, which makes sense since tons of brick and mortar stores were struggling due to the lockdown, while many online retailers saw a boom in their business. The part that makes me feel a little bit more fishy though is Tai and Alex were seeking outside investors with tons of money to help foot the bills for these well-known companies, in exchange for things like equity and interest rates that seem too good to be true.
The opportunity is simple. You put money into one of my brands as a promissory note, you get a monthly payment that comes out to between 10 and 15% annual fixed income. And at the end of the promissory note term, you get all your money back.
And he did so by definitely crowdsourcing it by posting ads like this on Instagram. Did you realize for every $300,000 invested in our preferred dividends, we will send you $60,000 a year in monthly payments, only for accredited investors. Return not guaranteed. Invest at your own risk. This is not an offer. Click below. Yeah, apparently the dividends for $60,000 for every $300,000 invested allegedly turned all of this into a Ponzi so they could keep up paying the first investors those dividend checks, because that's a crazy dividend. 20% dividend return. That is just outrageous. And well, now we know, since the SEC's suit alleges that between 2020 and 2022, Mehr and Lopez made material misrepresentations to hundreds of investors about bankrupt retailers they had acquired. You know, like saying their portfolio companies were on fire and the cash flow is strong, despite Dress Barn experiencing losses of nearly $13.3 million and $10.7 million for 2020 and 2021, respectively. And I mean, all it takes is one look at Rev's website and you can see just how much they were branding these ventures as huge successes, even though they were allegedly aware that they were in massive financial trouble. Seriously, the site is just full of articles calling them e-commerce powerhouses and flowery bios detailing once bankrupt companies now supposedly resurrected by Rev. Plus, Tai was documenting all of these acquisitions as huge money moves on his social media and trying to entice more investors with each new opportunity. But what Tai wasn't telling his social media, that while some of the Rev retailer brands generated revenue, none of them generated any profits. So these dividends he promised weren't coming from revenue generated from the businesses like he advertised. In fact, according to the complaint, they resorted to using a combination of loans from outside lenders, merchant cash advances, money raised from new existing investors, and transfers from other portfolio companies to cover obligations, like that insane 20% dividend. And the SEC alleges that at least $5.9 million of these returns paid to investors were actually Ponzi-like payments funded by other investors, as opposed to the company's profits. Meaning these business gurus were taking on new investor money to pay other investors that have invested with them before. They allegedly started transferring millions of dollars in funds between businesses to cover their asses as early as November of 2020, mere months after their inception. At this point, they were basically slapping a band-aid over the issue and probably just hoping that eventually one of these brands they resurrected from the dead would suddenly boom and save them from ever facing any real consequences. Or maybe they were just terrible at managing money, because the Federal Regulatory Agency also claims that Mehr and Lopez allocated $16 million worth of investments for their own use, according to the filing. So yeah, on top of using their investors' money to pay out other investors, which by the way is the definition of a Ponzi scheme, they're also allegedly funding their own lavish lifestyles with this money. I imagine it's really hard to sell success to others if it looks like your financial situation is declining. So I would like to say that Tai has successfully managed to place himself into the guru trap, because if you're not constantly upgrading and getting richer and richer, or appearing to be richer and richer, your method's not working. Then it's going to be harder for you to sell courses. So you just gotta have to up the stakes and keep playing the charade, like renting $100 million mansion, apparently. Because let's be real, the monthly payments on that leased $100 million mansion could not be cheap. So not only were they lying to investors about the potentials of these opportunities, they were also skimming money for themselves.
Remember, the world does not reward overly shy people. Get out of the house, come to the mastermind, come to the party. You will make more money by spending at least 10% of your month. That's just 3 days getting around people that are doing better than you, that have different ideas. You can do exchange, you can do collab. So come to my party and mastermind. I got one coming up.
But I've focused a lot on Tai so far, when there's two other named in the lawsuit: Alex Mehr, who I've mentioned before, and Alex Rose Burkenroad, the COO of Rev. And get this, Tai's cousin. Okay then. So Alex Mehr is advertised on the Rev site and by Tai as a NASA scientist with a PhD and a successful businessman who sold his dating app Zoosk for $300 million, which does make him sound like someone who might actually know what he's talking about. And for being a NASA scientist, his LinkedIn shows that he actually worked for a company called QSS Group, who were only contracted by NASA. So technically he could say he was one, but he didn't directly work for NASA.
He also claims in his bio to be a former NASA scientist, but looking at his LinkedIn, he never actually worked for NASA. He instead worked for the QSS Group, a small engineering company that was a contractor for NASA. So while he did work on NASA in a sense, he was never an employee there.
But who knows? I guess Tai and Alex just bonded over their apparent shared love of stretching the truth. Oh, and that $300 million sale of Zoosk, that happened in 2019, and apparently Alex left the company 5 years prior in 2014. So again, it sounds good when you read it and probably made potential investors feel a little bit better about handing over large chunks of cash, but ultimately it doesn't really seem to be very truthful. It's like, sure, you might have been a part of founding that company, but you can't really say you sold it for $300 million if you bailed 5 years before the sale.
Seemingly, his most significant accomplishment is co-founding dating website Zoosk and selling it for $298 million. He co-founded Zoosk in 2007 and stayed there as co-CEO until 2014, but his claim that he sold it for $298 million is quite misleading. Zoosk was sold in 2019, a full 5 years after Mehr left the company, so he can't take credit for the sale as he had no involvement at the company at the time. Yet on his bio, he claims that he was the one who sold it for $298 million.
But according to the complaint, Alex has no problem lying to investors because even after 2 years of bleeding money, Alex still allegedly had the balls to email investors in 2022 and ask for even more money, claiming that they had been dealt a strong hand with the ace brands that they have acquired over the last couple of years. Because I guess losing tens of millions of dollars is now being considered a strong hand. And for Tai's cousin, Maya, she's got less than an honest bio on her own on the Rev site that claims that she has over 10 years of experience managing multi-million-dollar companies. But unfortunately, Burkenroad's only alleged professional experience was a substitute preschool teacher, a promoter at a radio station, and an assistant to her cousin Lopez in his online education company, according to the complaint. Everything about this company seems to have been a little bit it's just straight up fraudulent from the jump. Bogus bios, flimsy promises, and just inflated success stories that helped them pull the wool over investors' eyes for years. And honestly, some people saw this coming. Because what has been interesting to me about this whole thing is seeing a lot of people coming out to defend Tai and his crew. And I mean, that's just kind of stupid because, hey, if Tai ran a business and it failed, and he was honest with investors the entire time, that would be fine. Like, would he get clowned on by the internet? Yeah, probably. But that's business. Sometimes they fail. Actually, oftentimes. Apparently 20% of businesses fail within the first year and nearly 50% fail within 5 years. So if the company just simply failed, he lost a bunch of investors, accredited investors' money, and then he closed doors and went, well, we tried our best. That wouldn't have been that bad because those investors knew the risk. And from what I can tell, he only raised money from accredited investors. It's not like they launched a crypto coin and showed it to normal everyday people, right? I'm actually double checking now. Oh no, they did. Scratch that. Okay, so to try to land my point here. So if they didn't do that and only lost accredited investors' funds, it wouldn't be as big of a deal because that's business, that's investing. Obviously, buying companies that have already gone bankrupt, that's extremely risky, and there's a track record there of them failing previously. And then obviously the returns were just outrageous. So that's definitely a extremely risky investment with allegedly some potential upside there. That didn't pan out. But hey, there'll definitely be a whole lot more to this story, so feel free to subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.